Hello, friends. Every organization that develops a product will be having certain strategies to reach to its customers. One such type of an operation is called as supply chain management, and the supply chain management strategies, it differs from each and every organization, but the basics remains the same for all, and that basics is what we are going to see in this today's topic. Let us try to understand what is this supply chain is all about. As we already told you that the supply chain management is nothing but the integration of activities. Any raw material which is coming in that has been transformed into a final product and deliver it to the customers is what we call it as the supply chain, and the statement says that competition is no longer between the companies but it is between the supply chains. How easy a product can be reached to its customer is what every organization is striving for. Let us try to know what is the difference between supply chain management and traditional purchasing. We all know in traditional purchasing it focuses on initial cost, but whereas in the supply chain management it focuses on the complete or the total cost of the ownership. The traditional purchase, it tries to negotiate the price which is suitable for the purchaser, but whereas it supply chain management, it suits for the entire supply chain. It particularly not focuses on the purchaser, but it focuses on the complete supply chain process. Let us try to understand the example of what a supply chain is all about. If you can able to see on the left side where a farm is there, from that farm we take the raw materials and process it into the hops or grains, and the can manufacturers and the bottle manufacturers are the supplement aid for the particular processing. Then the outcome of hops and grains are into the brewers, where the can and the bottle manufacturers acts as the ancillary, and the brewers will develop a product, it gives to the customer, and then it reaches to the customer with the help of any groceries or distributors. The credit flow, the credit flow, it is from the low level management to the top level management, where the ideas are their ideas and the designs are generated to satisfy the end customers. In case of any alterations, then the process will vary. Some of the material flow and information flow which has to be happening in this supply chain is as follows. The initial supplier and the ultimate supplier has to have the to and fro information flow as well as the material flow. There must be having a good inter-organizational information passage, and the flow of information has to be from initial supplier to the ultimate customer. And what are all the things that the supply chain focuses on? It is very simple that the supply chain, it focuses on the flow of goods and information from the initial supplier to the ultimate customer, whereas in between we have someone called as the immediate customer, where the purchasing, the traditional purchasing, it completely focuses on the flow of goods and information from immediate supplier and the immediate customer, whereas the supply chain management, it focuses on the flow of goods and information from the initial supplier to the ultimate customer, where we call it as the end point and where we get the feedback from them. Let us take the example of an industry where the supply chain economics are listed out here. And all industries will be having half of the percentage of purchase, and in automobile we call it as an ancillary, where we have 67% of purchases happening, and in the food industry we have 60%, paper is 55%, petroleum industry it's having around 80%, and the transportation which is around 62 percentage. Some of the ethics that needs to be followed in the supply chain are listed here. So the opportunities for unethical behavior are enormous and temptations are high. Obviously it will be for all the customers, and many companies, they will be having some strict rules and code of conduct that defines the behavior of an employee in that particular organization. So for that, in order to overcome all those problems, Institute for Supply Chain Management have developed a set of principles that needs to be followed, and it is nothing but a standard in order for every customer to act with the ethical behavior. Principles and the standards. The three major principles which is followed in the supply chain management is, the first thing is, every organization or every employee works in an organization has to be loyal to the organization, and he has to be justice to those with whom he is dealing with, and the faith in the profession. The loyalty, justice and faith in the organization and with the persons whom they are dealing with is what it makes a principle and the ethical supply chain management. So these are the ethics that needs to be followed in the supply chain management. And some of the things that we need to avoid during the supply chain management are some unethical actions like relationships and the communications. The unethical communications and unethical relationships, it has to be avoided, and the intention for showing it is also has to be avoided. And we need to demonstrate the loyalty to the employer, and by abiding the reasonable care and the instructions which has been framed by the organization, and any personal businesses or professional activity that creates a disturbance or a discrepancy between a personal interest and the interest of the employer, which has to be completely avoided, which in turn affects the growth of the organization. Accepting money, loans, or what we call it as a prime, so those things are all we need to avoid. And confidential and the property information has to be handled properly, abiding by the rules of government and also to the legal authorities, and promoting the positive supplier relationships through courtesy and impartiality. So the partiality has to be kept aside, and we need to treat everyone equally and avoid the reciprocal agreements, which in turn affects the growth of organization. We need to know and obey the letter and the laws which is applicable to the supply chain management, and encourage the small or disadvantaged or minority owned businesses, and we need to acquire and maintain the professional competence. The professional competence is what it majorly concerns in the supply chain management. The strategy will be based on the professional competence, which in turn increases the profit of the organization, and we need to enhance the stature of the supply chain management profession. And how do we manage the supply chain? The first thing we need to do is the mutual agreement on goals, and the trust and the compatible organization culture. So these things we need to rely upon, and we need to know the understandings and the environment of the employee and environment of the organization, and we need to agree for all the supply chain management, and in case of any significant management issues of controlling it. So some of the quizzes that are there. So this particular quiz, the two questions in the quiz comprises the first two questions in the exams. So let us take the first quiz that supply chain management is concerned with. So you can try to answer the question, and you can try to say whether it is a true or false. A supplier invites you to attend a professional football game at his expense. You have no intention of letting this affect the amount of business you do with the supplier. According to the ISM Code of Ethics, this may give the appearance of compromising practice, and you should not accept the gift. Maybe this is true or false.